Hello everyone, this is a very special presentation made with the help of Eckerd College students. We will be collaborating with students to find wellness topics that they're interested in and put them into presentation form to give you some great, informative presentations. Our presentation today will cover the 8 dimensions of wellness for the United States and is helped by Troy Dunham. First, we'll cover the intellectual dimension of wellness. There are a lot of different metrics to look at when judging the intellectual dimension of wellness in a country, and the United States test scores in comparison to many other countries usually fall within the 10 to 20 range. However, they are usually ranked as one of the top educational countries in the world. And some of the statistics that represent that are that there is free education to every child K through 12 with special education as well for people with disabilities. And the United States has a graduation rate of 85% from high school, which is high. It's not the highest, but it's pretty high. And over 27% of people get a bachelor's degree from college. So most of those numbers are really good. They're up in the tops. But the thing that really sets the United States apart from the rest of the world is its university system. The United States has 15 of the top 20 universities, and there just really isn't any comparison with the amount of resources that go into research, technology, and continuing education. It's really the gold standard for the United States education system, and it really sets the bar for all the other countries. And that is the reason why intellectual dimension of wellness is very robust in the United States. The next dimension of wellness that we're going to discuss is the physical dimension of wellness. The United States of America is a very interesting country when it comes to physical dimensions of wellness. Firstly, they have the highest obesity rate in the world of 35%, and it's climbing quicker than anywhere else. This is most likely undoubtedly due to really poor food selection. And the reason that I say that is because the United States also has 40,000 gyms and fitness centers, which ranks first in the world by triple more than any other country except for Brazil. And also, over 50% of Americans get some form of exercise 3 or more times per week. As well, 25% of adults participate in sports on a weekly basis, and roughly 40% of kids participate in sports on a weekly basis. So those numbers conflict with the obesity rates. It tells a story of an active country, which the United States is a country that has tons of sports options. It's definitely the mecca for sports. Most of the world's championships are in major sports are played here. There are some sports like soccer and cricket that are very big in other parts of the world, but the sporting culture in the United States is definitely the most well-developed, and tons of money is poured into sports at not only the pro level, but even into the youth level. And the emphasis on fitness is high, so the reason for the obesity rate would almost most certainly have to be poor food. The next dimension of wellness that we're going to talk about is the spiritual dimension of wellness. The United States is an attractive place for spirituality just because one of the main tenets of the Constitution is a freedom of religious liberty. That being said, the dominant religion in the United States is Christianity, with 205 million people identifying as Christians, and a large section of those are Catholics as well. There is 3.45 million Muslims, 7.16 million Jews, and there's over 50,000 places of worship in the United States. Now, the overwhelming power of the Christian community can be seen in a couple statistics here. 88% of Congress currently identifies as Christian. So that's both the House and the Senate. And almost all U.S. presidents have been Christian. And almost 50% of Americans say that it is important for a president to have strong religious beliefs. So there are also some statistics on whether people believe that laws should be created by the Bible, or should be reflected in the Bible's teachings and things like that, that tell how powerful the Christian culture is in many of the different aspects of American life. Now, interestingly, it's also, even though Christianity is the dominant spirituality in the United States, it is reducing at an alarming rate. And many people are turning to kind of alternative spirituality options. So there are over 6,000 yoga studios in the United States, and for sure some of that has to do with fitness. But a movement to non-traditional religious options and spiritual options is definitely being witnessed in the United States at this time. A couple additional notes here. Motivational and spiritual speaking is a $2 billion industry in the United States. And the United States has 53 national parks, the most national park land of any country in the world, and where many people are turning their spiritual roots back to nature. The next dimension of wellness that we're going to talk about is the environmental dimension of wellness. America's sheer size offers various climates, terrains, and landscapes for anyone looking for a connection to Mother Earth. There's over 95,000 miles of shoreline and over 73,000 named mountains, and over 1.2 million square miles of forestry. America is also a fertile land with many resources that provide opportunities for all of its people. There's 587,000 square miles of arable land and over 3.5 million miles of agricultural land. It's the largest producer of natural gas and petroleum in the world. And gold, copper, silver, and timber are all abundant as resources. The United States does have some issues with pollution. The United States is the number one producer of plastics in the world and is considered the number 3 biggest polluter of plastic pollutants in the world. So they do try and do as good a job as possible with recycling, but the plastic pollutants are one of the highest concerns for environmental agencies in the United States. Their air pollution has actually been improved by about 70% since the 1970s, and that's due to changes and regulations on automobiles and industry. And speaking of automobiles, there is a big push for electric automobiles. However, there is kind of a dichotomy there, because even though it reduces the air pollution, the mining of rare earth minerals for the batteries is pretty damaging to the earth as well. Next, we're going to talk about the social dimension of wellness for the United States. The term melting pot has been used for America and is a great adjective for society and culture in America. Americans are sometimes in bustling cities that are all based on speed, but then there's another almost 50% of Americans that live in rural areas that are much slower lifestyle. So saying that all Americans are one thing or another is usually too generalizing. So just some of the stats, the foreign-born population in the United States is 45 million people. And 254 million people speak English and 43 million speak Spanish. There's 3 million Chinese speaking and even a few more million of other languages as well, but there's a huge variety. It's not very homogeneous. And you see that with the way society is as well. That, as I mentioned, there are a lot of people who like to live in these urban areas and have options to go out and to go to festivals and to go shopping and all these things, see movies. But then you also have a rural population of people that are taking in nature and taking care of their farms and staying home and doing these types of things. So it kind of just depends on where you're at and the background of the family a lot of times. You can't get away from the social aspect of wellness without talking about the nutritional aspect of wellness. And in the United States, this again has huge variety. We see over 36% of adults eating fast food on a daily basis, essentially. So fast food is a huge part of American culture, and there is no shortage of burger places and taco places, and as many big fast food chains as there are now small individual fast food restaurants that are trying to get into the market. Alongside with the increase in delivery options, there has been just a huge demand for people to get their food basically instantly and whatever they want. They never have to wait. So that's part of the American culture that plays through into their food, and it also probably plays into the obesity rate, because fast food quality is extremely low, and it's been shown that a fast food meal has about 11% higher calorie rate than a traditional meal made at home. When people do go out to restaurants or bars, alcohol is definitely highly important in this culture. It is part of many business meetings or happy hours directly after work, but also weekends as well. Associated with going out and drinking alcohol, there's also great opportunities for performers in the United States. So specifically, people who are just a pickup band or a garage band and like to play music on the weekends, there's tons of opportunity, tons of gig jobs for people who love to play live music, and people go out every weekend just to find those people at different bars and little places where they can listen to live music. But there's also opportunities for other performers, especially in certain more artistic cities. If you go to obviously New York, but New Orleans, even in Los Angeles, when you're down and out, there'll be magicians or there'll be street painters, there'll be all kinds of things. So there's all kinds of creative, capitalist level performances and performers out there that are trying to always take their part in the market. Next, we'll talk about the occupational and financial areas of wellness for the United States. The number one reason why people come to the United States is for economic opportunity and financial stability. The United States national wealth, which is assets minus liabilities, they're number one in the world at $105 billion. They're third in the world in mean wealth per adult. 17.7 trillion in GDP, which is second in the world. Before COVID, a 3.67 unemployment rate percentage. That's really low. There was a 4% personal income increase in 2019 as well. It also has the second largest welfare state in the world in terms of spending. Most American workers are employed by the service sector, around 71% of all employees. The highest level of that is service industry sector, so trade, transportation, and utilities, and followed by education and health services. There's also 22.5 million American workers in the government, and 2/3 of those are at the local level, and 13 million Americans work in manufacturing, and that number is still going down. About 16 million Americans are self-employed, and with the people that work for self-employed people, that accounts for 30% of the nation's workforce. There is still a wage gap between women and men, but that wage gap is decreasing, especially with younger workers. Finally, we're going to discuss the emotional component of the 8 dimensions of wellness for the United States. The United States is third in the world as far as rate of depression. They're also very highly ranked in many mental disorders, including schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. Additionally, the U.S. ranks 27th in suicide rate, so not as bad as the third ranking of depression, but still one of the higher rates of suicide, and it is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. Traditional gender roles in relationships are most common in the United States, but non-traditional gender roles have increased in their acceptance among the population. Still not 100%, and maybe not as forward as some more progressive countries, but the inclusion aspect of non-traditional gender roles has increased. And finally, Americans are very strong-willed, and their beliefs, though sometimes can be corrupted or manipulated by leaders, they still will follow those beliefs strongly, and they are determined, and protesting is encouraged in their country, and they are not a docile, servile type of culture. Emotionally, they wear their emotions on their sleeves, especially in certain forums. Men do express their emotions, especially in relationships, much less than women, and especially men in the sporting industry and agricultural areas. Men and women in the performance arts areas are expected to express their emotions a little bit more flamboyantly.